When I'm asked to introduce myself, I actually usually refer to myself as the head of chaos and janitorial services. A lot of folks think that's funny, but I'm going to tell you today why there's actually maybe a little bit more truth to that than you might think. Let's start with what are events. Events are a shared moment in time, just like right now, no different. They typically have a purpose, often business in nature. It can be a trade show, a conference, seminar, guerrilla marketing, a rewards recognition, motivational program. It could be a shareholders meeting, partner summit, developer conference. You'll see scenes like this, and you'll think that these are events. But these are events as well. And these are a little bit different than the ones you typically think of. As a moment in time, it's crucial that we think about what's happening socially, technically, economically, and politically, and to understand that context and how it has an impact on the event that we're trying to implement. We need to understand that context to ensure that the carefully crafted moments in time that we're creating for our audiences are not negatively impacted by our surroundings and by what is the norm within that community, within that culture. This should impact your strategic thinking, it should impact your planning, it should impact your execution and your operations. This is exactly what we did in 2009 when we transformed Sapphire to Sapphire Now. We looked at what was happening through these channels and we recognized that there were changes taking place, that there were new norms and new expectations. We recognized that there was a change in the way people consumed information. They wanted it digestible, consumable, in easy chapters. They didn't want one big message. So we moved from 60-minute keynotes to 30-minute keynotes. We added microforums, discussion tables, and a series of other changes in the content. We moved from pushing the string to having that content pulled when it was needed. We recognized that there was a change from B2B and B2C marketing to P2P marketing, people-to-people marketing. More and more we hear, if I don't hear it from my friends, I'm not as interested. If I get that reference or that endorsement from my friends, I believe it. P2P marketing is a new trend. We recognized that there was a great widening in the channels of distribution. Online, social media, peer-to-peer, more and more ways to get the messages out. So while face-to-face is still incredibly powerful, it is no longer as alone as it used to be. We recognized a change in time when the attendees wanted to receive that information. Again, it was not when it was available, it was when they wanted it and when it was useful and valuable to them. And finally, we set out to change the relationship between the attendees and Sapphire Now to the attendees and SAP. We recognized the importance was not with the event, but the importance was with the company and the host itself. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit more than just SAP and Sapphire Now. There's a familiar quote from Isaac Asimov who says, "The only constant is change." It actually goes on to say, continuing change, inevitable change. That is the dominant factor in society today. No sensible decision can be made any longer without taking into account the world as it is and the world as it will be. For example, in 1984, the gross domestic product of the United States went from majority manufacturing to majority service. This was well anticipated and well predicted and well seen, but its impact on education, on employment, on the economy was no less profound. Right now, smartphone sales are outpacing regular phone sales. 55% of new devices purchased are smartphones. In fact, in February, a new norm was reached. The majority of people with cell phones have smartphones. How many people here have a non-smartphone? There isn't a single, there's one hand back there, proudly. Smartphones have become the norm, and this a device, a technology, a concept that didn't exist 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. Finally, consider the U.S. Postal Service. Mostly a distribution channel. They had their Janus moment. They reached their zenith with first-class mail back in 2001, and you can see the line since then falling off. And the decline in first-class mail threatens this 400-year-old institution, the second largest employer in the United States, who in our lifetime could be gone. I call these moments when a new norm arrives a Janus moment, a Janus moment. It's named after the Roman god Janus. He symbolized change and transformation, transition from the past to the future, from one condition to another, from one place to another, from one view to another, like a new norm. Janus also represents time because he has both a forward-looking and a backward-looking face. In fact, January, the first month of the year, is named after the god Janus. Doors, bridges, archways, any place in which you transition from one place to another were the domains of the god Janus. And the caretakers, those who looked over those places, janitors. Janitors were named after the god Janus. They were the caretakers of his domains. No longer just those who simply clean, they were the caretakers of those space. In fact, those who ran schools many years ago were not custodians, they were called janitors. So another norm that's changed, just in the use of the term. To see these Janus moments and their impact on your experience, your events, your trade shows, your conferences, because they are happening all the time, to see these, you must first consider what your audience is doing during that shared moment in time in regards to social, technical, economic, and political environments. This is your job as the caretakers of your events, as the caretakers and the janitors of your audience and your experiences and your trade show and your experiential marketing, and fill in your agency tag word here. Over the past few years, the industry has been very good at accepting some of these new norms. Social consciousness has risen from a social issue to one that almost every event now has some kind of policy or plan associated with social consciousness. Reduced paper, reduced plastic, picking venues with solar collectors and recycling programs, all the acceptance of the new norm. Social media has democratized the conversation. It's empowered audience acquisition. It's greatly increased the distribution of content. It allows for sentiment analysis. Another norm that's been accepted and incorporated into what we do every day. Today I want to talk to you about a few trends that I'm seeing that are a bit more on the verge. Trends that are on the edge of having their own Janus moment and becoming norms. These are transformative and disruptive trends that I predict will have a very significant impact on our events and our experiences and ourselves as janitors and caretakers in very positive and possibly very challenging ways. The law of dangerous precedent says that any public action which is not customary either is wrong or, if it is right, sets a very dangerous precedent. Therefore, nothing should ever be done for the first time. Clearly, that's not the way it works in the real world. My grandfather used to carry that around. He was a copywriter at an ad agency. So if nothing should ever be done for the first time, yet things constantly change. There's no better way to see the coming of new norms than to look to the edge, to look to the fringe, to look to those who are setting dangerous precedent. If you feel uncomfortable, nervous, if you think it's not going to happen and laugh it off, if you think uncertain in what it means to you, listen to that feeling. The fringe becomes the norm. Earth Day, 40 plus years old. Now it's the norm. Let's look at the 5 trends I'm looking at right now and following. There's protest, transparency, user-generated content, lifelogging, 3D printing, or also known as additive manufacturing. It has become socially acceptable to be antisocial. Acceptable protest is now the norm. In fact, we celebrate disruption, certainly any just disruption. The Arab Spring very much kicked this off in December of 2010, 9 months before Occupy Wall Street. I'm not sure a lot of folks recognize that order. In fact, Time Magazine's Person of the Year in 2011 was the protester. Sometimes hard to tell whether they're a Wall Street occupier or an Arab uprising. In the London streets, there was violence after a local man was shot to death by the police in August. The organizers used BlackBerry Messenger to get the word out because it allowed free and unblocked access to anyone in your address book. As a result, the BlackBerry has become the requested technology, the requested device of 17 to 37-year-olds in Great Britain. And the digital advisor for the mayor of London referred to the BlackBerry Messenger as the Thugs Gutenberg Press. There's a transformative moment for you. This technology allowed a group of like-minded individuals to come together at unprecedented speed and unprecedented scale. And unlike Twitter, it couldn't be followed and tracked. The police could not stay one step ahead. Think this will never happen to your event? In February at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, students occupied the Center Plaza to protest cuts in their educational funding. Nothing to do with the event. But there were 67,000 people from 200 countries together, so they made a point of protesting and interrupting that program. Last week, Occupy San Francisco occupied the Wells Fargo shareholders meeting, and for a period of time actually got their way into the meeting itself. And just this week, in Australia, there was a flash mob protest in front of an Apple store that actually carried a message that seemed very related to a Samsung ad campaign. Samsung denies having anything to do with it. Protest may well be becoming the new marketing tool. I was reminded, though, in a conversation with somebody yesterday, that we used to call it guerrilla marketing. Guerrilla marketing was when that group showed up uninvited and unannounced and unplanned and took over your event. It had a much nicer name then. But it was also guerrilla marketing, maybe the domain of marketing, maybe the domain of us in the room and other agencies, but it wasn't necessarily the domain of society. Now it's become the domain of society. So the flash mob in front of the Apple store in Australia, if it wasn't Samsung, and they say that it wasn't, then who was it? Was it an avid fan of Samsung who decided to create their own campaign against Apple? Was it somebody else? Events have been targeted for years, actually. Michael Moore in the 90s and 2000s camped out in front of ballrooms in Las Vegas for his documentary on healthcare and healthcare industry. Why disrupt events? Well, as Willie Sutton would say, that's where the money is. The event organizers, you have spent an awful lot of time and money to bring together an audience that organization wants to talk to. And in addition to the built-in audience that's there, experience marketing can be a significant investment for any company. And what better way to protest than to interrupt that investment? Whether it's economics, politics, social issues, as they were the drivers in London and the Middle East and Barcelona and Wall Street. But what are the drivers that might cause somebody to protest your event? Does your high-level guest speaker have some issue that he represents or she represents? Are they focusing on CIOs in the top income bracket? Is there any message that you're trying to get across that intersects with a group that's ready to organize and protest? So again, on the survey, we asked the question of how many people had actually had their events occupied. And it's interesting to see that about 30% had. Now 70% haven't. So this is not a norm. It's not happening every single day. But 30% at one time or another had some portion of the proprietary event interrupted for a short period of time or for as long as over an hour. When it comes to third-party events, it's even a little rarer, actually down to about 21%, but certainly not unheard of. Whether it's as simple as a heckler, and a few people here have promised to heckle me at some point during this. I've promised to either never work with them as an agency or fire them. Or a full underground movement, you need to be prepared. And there are some friends that you can turn to, whether you are an in-house agency side or a client side. There are some friends you need to stay close to. And this is travel, legal, PR, HR, and your crisis management and security teams. The time is now to talk to them in advance of anything happening, not when it's happening. We were fortunate enough on an event that's happening for us in 2 weeks to find out from the city that we'll be doing the event in that somebody had asked for a permit to do a flash mob in front of our celebration night. The city had informed us, which was very nice. And when we told them that it wasn't something we were doing, they were nice enough to turn down the application. I now have no idea where that group will turn to stage their event. I have no doubt that I didn't stop them, I simply deterred them somewhere else. The next trend that I'm looking at right now is transparency. Since the dawn of time, governments and individuals and businesses have worked hard to protect their secrets and to get the secrets of others. And since the dawn of time, the greatest asset in both sides of this battle is wetware, people. It's the people who are the agents, the traders, the decoders, and those whose secrets are shared. New technology is always introduced to secure and to crack all those secrets. But the one most important tool is the social acceptance of keeping or sharing those secrets. I think back to the White House before Nixon and how cooperative the press corps was with the sitting president. We had presidents with back problems, we had presidents in wheelchairs, you never saw pictures of it. That was a secret kept. It was the social acceptance to keep that secret. That's not the case any longer. When is it acceptable to steal and to share, and when is it not? Right now, today, we celebrate those who create transparency like WikiLeaks, like Facebook. Transparency is expected due to the multitude of information channels available and to the people who are willing to put the information out. People continue to crave information, and more than anything, they crave secrets. Wired attendees expect more information in more ways than ever before, and with so many channels operating in real time, it's harder and harder to keep your hands on all of the things that are taking place. Yet proprietary events in particular are marked by a lack of transparency. How much did your exhibitors pay to be at the event? Do you publish a list of all of your attendees in advance of the show? Do you share all of the measurement from the event in its raw form afterwards? Imagine background checks, criminal and financial, on every speaker at your event made available to anybody who wants to see it on the internet. And the same with all of your executives and with all of your staff. Imagine open books on sponsor sales, planning, finance, guests, and more. Imagine raw data such as the attendee list and all of your measurement in its raw form being available to anyone to run their own analysis. If you, as the experience owner and the caretaker, won't make that information available, somebody will. Somebody will leak that eventually. At the moment, it may not seem like it is a norm, but more and more this is a trend that I'm looking at and worrying about. Will it become the norm for that kind of information to be shared for the common good? Eventbrite already allows prospects to see who's already registered by touching into their link book and Facebook page. It wasn't too long ago that the advanced list of attendees was a top perk for your top exhibitors. Now it's free and expected to be with everybody. That changes that value proposition very quickly. How many of you have ever seen your attendee list for sale from a list house? There's a couple here. We fight this on a regular basis. Social media has actually made it very easy for these list houses to find our exhibitors and find our attendees. They use our own social media channels to advertise and promote that they have a list of all of our registrants. I didn't give it to them, but I can't tell you that somebody else hasn't, and that becomes a challenge. So they're monetizing on this, and they're selling that list to basically anybody who wants it. If anyone had an exhibitor come back and ask for a better deal because they've heard that somebody else got one, we've had that as well. According to Mark Zuckerberg, transparency increases integrity. His entire business model at Facebook is oriented around society's growing embrace of transparency. Nowhere in society are our values shifting faster than our thinking about privacy and transparency. The events industry and you as the caretakers of your audiences and your experiences will not be immune from that. We're still very much in the middle of this transformation, so we have no way of knowing how this will be fully embraced and whether there'll be some moment that slows this down or accelerates this. I hope you're feeling the fringe by now. But how transparent are you? My survey again, I took a look and I asked how many people had their parents following them on their social media channels. Your parents. What secrets could you possibly have from your parents? 50% said no, never would they connect with their parents on Facebook. Over 70% said no, never on Twitter and Facebook. My mother's on my Facebook page, not on my LinkedIn page because she doesn't have a LinkedIn account. Yes, it absolutely changed the way I behave on Facebook. We asked who would share the event measurement information in its raw form. And close to 60% said they would share the raw information with their senior management. That's not terribly surprising. I was pleased to see almost 27% said, yep, they share their raw data, not the results, the raw data with their partners. The next one is, are you kidding me? I don't share it with anybody. And it goes down from there. The days of expecting all of the raw data from all of your events to be shared with everybody may be coming, may not. These are not predictions as much as they are just awareness of the trends that are taking place right now in our industry. Speaking of sharing, the next thing I'm looking at is all about sharing. Social media, we've been talking a lot about, started very much in the context of your social world. It started with your social information on Twitter and on Facebook. And it was mostly about you. But once that genie was released from the bottle, it doesn't stay in the social realm very long. In addition to the social change of who has something to share, There's also been a technical and economic change in the distribution systems that have completely equalized the distribution playing field. Technology has made media capture and manipulation common for the common man. Photos, print, website, music, and other rich media can be laid out and published like never before. And the tools used by the biggest media houses and by those of us in this room are the same. You can thank Adobe for that. As a result, user-generated content, much more than social media, user-generated content has endless reach, low investment, and an equal perception of quality. I remember back in the days, this is before any of you because I know you're all much younger than I am, in the high school newspaper that I was part of, we ran a mimeograph machine to make copies. They looked very different than the Wall Street Journal. There was a quality difference, and associated with that quality difference was an understanding that there was probably a quality of content difference. Nowadays, that quality of output difference is gone. Anyone can generate and distribute content at any time. Look at me. If radio killed the video star, then the digital revolution has killed the radio, TV, newspaper, guest speaker, and any other star you might think is out there. The Walla Walla, Washington high school newspaper website has the same reach as the BBC and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. I picked them because they were the second-placed winner in the 2011 Edward R. Murrow Journalism High School Competition. Not the winner, the second. I thought it was important to go to. And my mother likes Walla Walla, Washington. How does this affect the industry marketing and events that you guys are putting together? Well, first, anybody can create an event now. The barriers to putting on some of the techniques and tactics and shows that we do was often the content. And with that content now being generated by users and at a quality and distribution level equal to everybody, anyone can put on an event. Certainly anyone can create valuable content. Your community, your competitors, just somebody looking to make a few bucks less than you need to make will be able to compete with you. Back to the survey results, 100% of the people who finished the survey, and by the way, only about 33 people did, so the survey is still up and running. You can join, and I'll put all of this information out to everybody at the end, full transparency. 100% of those who answered had created content of some form or another on their own. The only thing they hadn't done, I mean, many have websites, many have done articles, have done presentations, and that reached over 500 people was my criteria here. The only thing they hadn't done was actually publish a book or a magazine. I guess those are dead technologies now. So what's your real advantage? Your event and its relationship with the audience is no safer than the radio and TV star is. Supply and demand quickly comes into place, and when there are many willing and able to provide content. Any equation between the value of the content and the price paid has been broken. Thousands are freely contributing to news sites, blog sites, friends, followers, fans, and providing content that at one point was monetized. Free or inexpensive content is now expected and becoming more and more the norm. If content is key to your success, chances are you're in trouble. If it's key to your financial success, even more so. Back to some of the survey results here. How important is content you provide to the value of your attendance? 55% said that it was critical. It was the reason. And this isn't a surprise to anyone, but to me it is a little bit of a concern. If 55% of the value and the reason that people come to your event is content, and content can be so easily replaced by user-generated content, your value proposition needs to change a little bit. And while the community and other sources represent a growing part of the content, this shows where the content is coming from. While community and other sources are growing, content from the host is still the norm. Professional photographers have been completely replaced by Flickr search. Record companies have been bypassed by Kickstarter, and comics are now producing their own stand-up comedy specials. Some organizations have embraced this Janus moment. They have embraced this new norm. The Event Marketing Summit has introduced unsessions, targeted conversations created, managed, and executed by the attendees. They have looked to place in the marketing mix as the change in the value proposition. This content originates here, therefore being here at its time of origination is an added value. Lynda.com has done one better. They offer a universe of print and video content on all things computing and software, resulting in a completely differentiating product that has search, digestible, and consumable results, and a monthly subscription model. This, in many ways, has replaced, unfortunately, the Adobe Max or the Microsoft Tech Ed events. How will you replace the value your content provides at your events and at your experiences when it could be available from another channel for free or for significantly less than you're trying to monetize it for? So let's go a little bit further into the fringe here. Lifelogging. This trend is a little bit further out there. Personal diaries have been hidden under mattresses and kept in drawers for years, and always peeked at by nosy friends. But as everything analog shifts to digital, and technology allows us to capture more and more information, and gadgets allow us to share more and more information, we are starting to collect a lot more and a lot different information about ourselves. Lifelogging is that process. Lifelogging is very established in the business and public sector environments. For instance, right now it is the norm to have a dashboard cam in a police car. But in 2000, only 11% of state highway patrol vehicles had dashboard cams. In 4 years, that rose to 72%. That's a Janus moment. It went to become the norm. At the same time, in 2003, police vehicles in cities of over 200,000 surpassed 50% with dashboard cams. It's standard to have your customer service call recorded, to have your social media comments captured and analyzed. Manufacturing lines use cameras and thermostats and other instruments to check for quality. Much of our business life is logged. Our personal lives are starting to now as well. It's possible to track your workouts, your blood pressure, your sugar levels, your weight, and many other aspects of your life, and to share them with designated community or to anyone. In fact, the motivating benefit of sharing these details is part of the value proposition. No more asking if you lost weight, just check out my Facebook page. But thanks for noticing. And the Google Glasses that many of you have probably heard about and may have not had a chance to see yet. The Google Glasses are the most adventurous gadget to date and could add further file on top of this lifelogging trend. If you haven't seen the video, it's up on YouTube. Take a moment. But imagine everything that's in your smartphone, in your laptop, available right in front of your face anytime you want, right in front of your eyes anytime you want. But what does this future of storing and capturing and sharing everything look like? So far, if I look at the survey results, only one person in the survey results had actually had a lifelogger at their event. And if the person's here, not the lifelogger, but the person who answered that question, I'd like to catch up with you afterwards and hear more about it. You're going to start seeing more and more lifeloggers attending your events. They're going to be wearing glasses or wearing cameras, but they're going to record everything they do. They're going to record your sessions. They're going to record their interactions. They're going to record their conversations. I even started acting differently when the microphone was put on to make sure I didn't have a presidential moment. Are you ready for attendees who capture everything? Are you ready for attendees who record and share and analyze everything that they do at your events? Do you have a policy for lifeloggers? Chances are in the next 4 or 5 years, you will have a lifelogger at your event. Lifelogging is one of the outcomes of a world where we have been digitizing everything. I have over 31,000 photographs in my image collection, 400 emails in my inbox, probably 500 by now, 200 in my personal email accounts, thousands of filed emails. I get no printed magazines any longer. All of my magazines come from Zinio and iBooks. All these images, all these items can be stored, shared, manipulated, digitized, and they can all be printed. You get the picture and you know this, okay? The digitizing of our lives has had material effect on everything related to media, communications, the office, and entertainment realms. Take a moment, look around the room, think about your lives, and think about what you think can't be digitized. You're probably wrong. My last and final trend that I'm keeping an eye on right now is absolutely the most furthest out there, but it's the one coming the fastest. Imagine clicking the print button on a computer screen and sending a file to a device that uses plastic, wax, wood, carbon fiber, even human tissue to print a three-dimensional output. 3D printing, also known as additive manufacturing, may soon do for manufacturing what computers and the internet have already done for creation, processing, and storing of information and rich media. This is actually a coin I had made for today, printed on a 3D printer. I'm happy to show it and share it with you guys later. It has the Janus dialogues on it, which I'll talk about more in a second, and the god Janus on the back. And this was printed on a 3D printer for low cost and very quickly. The shift is already starting to take place. The third industrial revolution in the next chapter of digitizing everything is upon us. The Economist magazine had a special section on this last week that sums it up much better than I could. So please take the time, track this down, and read it. If they had gone to press next week, I would have been oh so much smarter today. Think about printing new light fixtures at home whenever you want to replace them of any size and any dimension and any personalization that you might want to. Imagine restoring an old car, a classic car, by printing any piece that you couldn't find directly to the specs from the original manufacturer's guide and being able to put it in. Imagine going to the Home Depot or the Lowe's and printing any replacement part for any home appliance ever made. Imagine printing giveaways on ShowSite with your brand and your customers' and prospects' brands together on whatever that product is. Or printing booth elements, signage, whatever, on-site and on-demand as one-offs. The art and fashion worlds have already embraced this. They're doing some pretty amazing things. In fact, you can even print in chocolate now. The Easter bunny with the face of your children on it, printed at home once a year. So a lot of folks seem to know what 3D printing is. Not many have actually printed it or touched or done it themselves, but this is coming, and the devices are getting smaller and smaller and cheaper. The military is bringing trucks to the desert and printing any part they need for replacement for any airplane, helicopter that they're using. Single supply, print whatever you need. The Janus moment for 3D printing is still to come, but it is very, very, very predictable. And we are talking about Janus moments that will, as we talked earlier about the Janus moment of transitioning from the manufacturing economy to the service economy, this will be no less of a major change to our education, our economics, and our employment. We can now see the coming of this third industrial revolution. New and emerging norms are all around us, and for the caretakers of these experience marketing, we need to determine how we will be impacted by this and how we will impact these trends. We often look to our past to create our future. JanusDialogues.com is a site that I've built specifically for this conversation. In order to make today more than about just the mumblings of an old janitor, I've actually built a website, JanusDialogues.com, where I hope you will come and participate in these conversations. Much of what I've talked about today is up on this site. There's some other things on the site as well. The question that was asked at the beginning about which part of your engine are you focused on, and 43% were focused on measurement. There's a specific article on site that talks about modern measurement, that talks about measurement that very much includes the voice of the detractor and the promoter. If you look at that user-generated content and the power that that has, your detractors have equal voice and equal ability. Therefore, they have to be reflected in your measurement. So there's actually a write-up on Janus Dialogues about a modern measurement that reflects promoters and detractors. So I encourage you to visit the site, give your comments. There's a Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter page for this as well. And with that, I thank you for your time.
There you go. Thank you, Scott.